Hello, everyone. It's Ceylon from Spiritual Living for Busy People. Can you hear me all right? Welcome, Karen. Good to see you here. And Eva. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Awesome. So it's just past 5:30. You're welcome for the reminder. I know we're all busy and we forget, so I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad. Yeah, this beard, I've been growing this for quite a while now. Now it's really gotten out of control. I think last time you saw me, Eva, I didn't have anything. Simoy is here. That's my sister, for everyone, if you didn't know. So welcome, Simoy. Thanks for joining in. So I'll just jump right in, and hopefully we'll have others join us as things go along. But in respect for your time, for being here on time, I'll get started. So before I start, I wanted to share something that happened to me this morning. So I got up and was getting ready for work, and my son was up too, and he shared a little drawing with me that I wanted to share with you, because I was thinking, at least when I was on Facebook, I'm not on Facebook anymore, but there was a time when we were seeing all of these posters, the keep calm and whatever, keep calm and carry on. This was from World War II, I think, Britain, part of the British campaign to help people, stay calm and grounded during the war, which was a really tough time. And the government had this amazingly effective campaign where they printed these flyers, these keep calm flyers. And there was a time, I don't know if you remember, there was a time when, like, every other day I would see another keep calm. I'm not seeing that now a lot. I mean, again, I'm not on Facebook, but on other forms of social media, I'm not seeing any of the keep calms, and I feel like we could really use that now. Like, keep calm and carry on, keep calm and breathe, keep calm and whatever. Well, my son, this was what he presented me with this morning, and you probably might not be able to see it very well, but he drew this. He said, "Keep calm, I'm an expert." And notice that little skull there down at the bottom. So keep calm, I'm an expert. So you have nothing to fear, nothing to worry about. Of course, I'm not an expert, but I'm certainly inviting you to join me in a space where we can all find calm and find rest, and just rest from the relentless news that we're getting each and every day about this ongoing crisis with Corona or COVID-19, which at this point we know has touched probably every part of the globe. So we are all in this together. And that's part of what I want to talk about today. So I titled this video, The Summons to Oneness, because, and I'll kind of get into why I use that title. We're all being summoned, we're all being called to something. I believe that something is oneness. So again, I'll get more into that as we go along. But I wanted to start here with a little reading, and I'm going to read from something that's very familiar to me, and this is from the scriptures. Now, I understand that not everyone here may be Christian, but I just invite you to listen to the words that I'm reading and let it apply to you in whatever way that is meaningful for you. But this reading is from the scriptures, from First Corinthians, and I think I'm going to read from verse 14 to 26. And I'm going to read from my phone, so please forgive me. I'll do my best here to read clearly. So, and again, you can use this as a bit of a meditation, so you can get into a space of calm and taking a couple deep breaths before we begin. I know we're at the end of our day. Maybe some of you were at work, some of you were at home. Again, home trapped with family, and just looking for some space to find rest. So you can just take a deep breath or two. And so I offer this reading. So this is a reading from scriptures. 1 Corinthians 12. As a body is one, though it has many parts, and all the parts of the body, though many, are one body also in Christ. Now the body is not a single part, but many. The foot, if a foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it does not for this reason belong any less to the body. Or if an ear should say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it does not for this reason belong any less to the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God placed the parts, each one of them, in the body as he intended. If they were all one part, where would the body be? But as it is, there are many parts, yet one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I do not need you, or no, again, the head to the feet, I do not need you. Indeed, the parts of the body that seem to be weaker are all the more necessary. And those parts of the body that we consider less honorable, we surround with great honor. And our less presentable parts are treated with greater propriety. Whereas our more presentable parts do not need this. But God has so constructed the body as to give great honor to a part that is without it, so that there may be no division in the body, but that the parts may have the same concern for one another. If one part suffers, all the parts suffer with it. If one part is honored, all the parts share its joy. So again, I wanted to share this and I'm going to use this as kind of the theme for this time together. This sense of oneness, one body, right? We understand what that means. We are each organisms. We are a body with many parts, not just external parts, but internal parts, many internal parts. We even have parts within us that are not really parts of us, but they're in us. We're learning more about these gut, what do you call them? I'm not sure. These biomes that work with our digestive systems to help keep us healthy. So even within ourselves, we find ourselves being a multitude, so as to speak, but we're one. So in this body, all the parts work together, even the parts that we consider less honorable. They are all they all have an important role to play. So I wanted to keep that reading in mind, but I also want to share another reading, and this has more to do with the summoning part of the title of this. And this is from a blog post by Brené Brown, who I think a lot of you might recognize that name. Brene Brown is a I think a licensed social worker who has become very, very popular with her books and teachings about vulnerability, shame, researcher. She exploded on the scene after doing a TED Talk, which I think is one of the most watched TED Talks of all time. So she's very popular. I think she just released a podcast as well. So this was from a blog post she wrote and that I shared on my own blog. And this blog post was called The Midlife Unraveling. So I'll read a section here. And she starts with this in classic Brene Brown style. I'm not screwing around. And I think, and I forget what the context was. I should have gone back to the blog post. But I think this is, she was referring to, when life calls us out of our normal way into something new. We're being summoned into something new, and the universe is calling us. And I believe this was kind of the universe speaking to her and speaking to us. So this is what it's saying. I'm not screwing around. All this pretending and performing, these coping mechanisms that you've developed to protect yourself from feeling inadequate and getting hurt has to go. Your armor is preventing you from growing into your gifts. I understand that you needed these protections when you were small. I understand that you believed your armor could help you secure all the things you needed to feel worthy and lovable, but you're still searching and you're more lost than ever. Time is growing short. There are unexplored adventures ahead of you. You can't live the rest of your life worried about what other people think. You were born worthy of love and belonging. Courage and daring are coursing through your veins. You were made to live and love with your whole heart. It's time to show up and be seen. So there it is, the universe speaking to all of us through Brene Brown. The universe is speaking, and it's calling us, summoning us. Let me just take a pause, guys. I'm seeing a few texts, a few chats coming in. So welcome again to all of you. Rachel from Lincoln, Elizabeth, thank you very much. Bless you as well. Tell me, where is everyone viewing from? If you can just quickly type in where you are in the world watching this. It's so cool to have. I think I shared in the last live stream that I did. It's so cool to have technology. Who would have thought that we were all embracing video conferencing and live streaming technology? It seemed like yesterday we were all talking about how social media and the internet and technology was tearing us apart. And now here we are being drawn together from many parts of the world online. So, and I'm going to try to stop tapping this table so that my video doesn't jump. So, upstate New York, Deep Gap, North Carolina. Welcome, welcome. Wonderful. Diane in Seattle, welcome. And by the way, I am in upstate New York myself. And as many of you know, New York is kind of become the epicenter, one of the epicenters of this global crisis. We're a little bit removed from that, but it's not very far away. So we know that there's so much going on, so much changing day by day as the testing goes up. But we're in a place where it feels like this crisis is very close to our doorsteps. Mary from Brene Brown. Really, Long Island, New York. Pamela, welcome, and I hope you're staying safe. You're a lot closer to where everything is happening. So please be safe. And walk in love and light. That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you. So I share two readings that I believe speak to the title of what I'm going to talk about today, the summons to oneness. The first was reading from scripture, talking about the body, using kind of a metaphor of the body as a metaphor for the church, which ideally is one body. As we know, even in church life, in Christian life, we know that is not fully the case. That we try to be one body, but we're often splintered. But the goal is to be one body. So that metaphor of using the body as a symbol for the church, but also applying it to each of us, whatever walk of life we are from. So Karen, I'm sorry, your internet isn't doing well. Is anyone else having trouble with the internet? I hope this is showing up okay for everyone. But Karen, I hope the reception improves. I think my internet here is working, so hopefully it improves. And the second reading I shared, Brené Brown. Good. So the summons. What is a summons? A summons, we know from legal life, legal term. Kind of, it's a call to appear. Usually before a court. If you're stopped in traffic, you get a summons to court. If there is if you're being sued, something legal, then you're summoned. Usually in that summons, there isn't really much of a choice but to respond in some way. It's something that's very hard to ignore. You don't get a summons in the mail and just chuck it, right? If you get a summons, it's something that kind of stops you in your tracks, and you have to deal with it in some way. However you choose to deal with it is your choice. But the fact that you have to stop and give it your attention is very much true. So what is the summons? For us, I mean, obviously, I think for us now today, we're being in a way that we've really, and again, I'm not a historian. Any historians here can correct me. I don't think we've ever really truly had an event that kind of stops the whole world just on a global scale. We're all being summoned to something. Life, as we knew it, has changed in some fundamental way. I don't think we quite understand exactly what that will unfold into, but I think we each feel in our gut that something's changed in a radical way that's caused the whole world to stop. I think even the world wars, even in the world wars, it wasn't quite like that. We had maybe parts of the world that felt like that, like the whole world, but not the whole world really was involved. There were parts of the world that wasn't involved in the world wars, World War II, World War I. But here, this is very much global. And I think the technology has a part to play in that news travels around the world at the speed of light. So we know what was happening when it started, and as things unfolded, we've all been in real time, experiencing this. So I want to share a little bit of a personal story about the summons, about being summoned, what it's like to be summoned. And I hope as I share this that you may resonate with it in some way in your own life. So since I was very young, I've always been involved in my church. I am Catholic. I'm a chaplain now. I work as a music director. The church has always been a part of my life. When I was young, my mom took me to prayer group, and I was there in the midst of all these ladies reading the Bible. It was just something that was part of my life, my whole life. And then at some point in my youth, I felt what in Catholic circles we would consider a call. Felt a call to the priesthood, to become a Catholic priest. This was something that, and I think if you talk to priests or people who have considered priesthood, is a very painful process, something that's very hard, because most people will tell you that they really didn't want to pursue this. It was something that just appeared in their lives in some way. That was very much the case for me. I felt like there was this calling, like God was asking me to pursue, or at least look into priesthood, and it was something that I resisted very much. For obvious, I mean, I think for most people, the main obstacle is, celibacy and, not having a life partner, someone to share your life with, living alone. And so I wrestled with that for many years, and had a couple, false starts, looking into it, pulling back, trying, and then not trying not to look at it. Eventually, did spend some time in a program, and then eventually left, got married, and I thought, okay, that was the end. I looked into that, and I just, decided to not pursue priesthood. Again, this is just a very quick, like 30,000 foot, flyover this story of my life. This was a very long, difficult, painful period of my life that I'm just doing a very quick gloss over. But what happened, I thought, after getting married, after having lots of children, okay, clearly, this ministry thing isn't for me. So I went looking and pursuing other avenues, other forms of work. Tried a couple things, never really felt, nothing clicked or resonated. So what I did, I ended up completing my education in theology. I did philosophy. I took all these philosophy courses, which were great. I actually loved philosophy, which most people hate philosophy. I absolutely loved it. I soaked it all up. And then I was getting ready to do theology when I left. I decided to get my master's in theology. After I got married, did that. And then after getting my degree, I went into campus ministry on the college campuses. And it just felt amazing to me that after, looking into priesthood and thinking the ministry wasn't for me, finding my way kind of right back to where I started. This call, this summons that was placed on my life, it felt like something I couldn't quite get away from, even if I tried. And but I was very happy in campus ministry. I did that for 5 years. I loved the students. I loved being in a learning environment. And but then after a while, I felt maybe it's time to try something different, try something new. My family was growing again. I was looking for a way to also increase my income, and so I left this wonderful job that I had, this campus ministry job, and I went into consulting, business. Why? It was something that felt exciting, something that felt new. Again, an opportunity to do something different, and also to earn more money and earn more income for my family. So it seemed to kind of check a few boxes for me, and I did that. And almost immediately, I found myself realizing that I had made the wrong choice. And it was a miserable, brutal few months. And again, for those of you who have been reading my blog, I shared about this on my blog. But about 7-8 months into it, I ended up getting fired from that job. And it was one of those very painful moments in my life where it unraveled me in many, many ways. And but out of that experience, I was out of work, looking for and not really sure where I was going to go from that point. And this was when the thought of going back into ministry came. But instead of going back into campus ministry, going into hospital chaplaincy. Again, long story short, led me into hospice, which is what I've been doing for the last few years. Now, as a hospice chaplain, I'm doing many things that look and feel like a priest. So actually, I find myself getting called father, pastor quite a bit, even when I explain to people that I am a lay minister, meaning, I'm not an ordained priest. I'm a lay minister. I try to explain to people very rationally and so on that, that here are the things I can do as a Catholic, here are the things I can't do as a Catholic. For people who are not Catholic, that doesn't mean as much to them. But to Catholics, I try, and sometimes I explain and sometimes they say, okay, thank you. And I would still get called father, pastor. So, but I laugh, but it's very interesting to me how, again, I went so far out of what I thought, was out of this ministry, went into business, and somehow life brought me right back to where I started. So now I'm being called father and pastor. This call that has been on my life since I was a young boy. Somehow the Lord has worked things, even within my free will. And free will is, and I know some of you are probably thinking, free will, where does free will come into all this? We maybe, and that might be for a whole other video. But, even within the context of my free will, my practicing free choice, I still could not escape this call or this summons, right? I was called into whatever gifts the Lord gave me, saw that they would be best exercised in some ministry format. It's always been a struggle for me because ministers don't make that much money. It's very hard. Ministers can have a very hard time, just getting by, feeding their families. And I've always wanted to stay away from that. I wanted to do something that felt more successful. I wanted to be, something else, an engineer, or a person who can be looked up to. Of course, not to say that ministers aren't looked up to, but was kind of looking when I was younger, looking at other things, other metrics for success. And it turns out that success for me looked very different than what success looks like for other people. Success for me is spending time with people who are dying. And if I say that, people often look at me funny, like I must be going crazy. But this is the call that's been placed on my life, and here I am. So that's the summons. That's what the summons is like for me. I don't know what it's like for you. And if you want to share, please feel free. But it's this force. It's very hard to describe. And that's why I wanted to share this story. It took me half an hour to share it. But it's this force that is and it doesn't feel like it's not a pushy kind of force. It's not something, maybe it might feel that way sometimes. There might be periods of time when it felt like that. For me, there was a time, when I was living in the Cayman Islands for a while, and I was still very young at that time, 19, 20, 21. And that's when I was really kind of in the midst of kind of my first wave of thinking about being a priest. And people would come up to me and just ask me, are you a priest? Like out of the blue. And I'd be like, I'm not wearing a collar, I'm not advertising anything. People would just come up to me and ask me out of the blue. So there was a really intense time where it was felt like a force was slapping me right in the face. But often it's not like that. It's more of this very subtle, this powerful but subtle force that just keeps moving and shifting. It's almost like maybe like the action of water on rock, something like that. It's very powerful, but it acts over a long period of time. So you don't see it. You don't see the effects of the force right there and then. But over time, you see a pattern of things, of events conspiring in a certain way that leads you into a path. And again, we can talk about free will. And I know we're freedom-loving people. We love our freedom. And I'm not going to say that we don't have free will. I think that there is a place for choice where we can choose to accept or reject something. But there is this overall sense of, a summons that we have no choice but to answer. So like that summons that you may get, and I hope that you don't get it because none of us want, a court summons. But kind of like the summons, it's very difficult to ignore. It's the same thing here with these life summons, right? So, I think what I want to argue here is that on a global scale, we are being summoned, and again, in a way that we've never quite seen before. We are being summoned. We're all being called out of our ordinary lives and called to pay attention to something. In my last call, I suggested that part of what we're being called to is presence. So practicing full presence to one another in this time. So, and I saw Karen wrote that you closed all your apps to give all my attention. I did catch that. I love it. And I hope the stream is working better for you. But so that's part of what we're being called to stop, to slow down, to take our eyes off of this, and to look up at each other through this or this. But now we're using this in a new way. We're not using this to escape from one another. We're using the technology that we were once using to escape from one another. We're now using it to connect and to pay attention to one another. So that's a beautiful thing. So this is, what are we being summoned to? We're being summoned to oneness. So we are being summoned to realize that we are one body, that we are not independent individuals walking around and just living our lives completely disconnected from others. We're learning in a very painful way that we're all connected, and that what happens halfway around the world affects each and every one of us. And we may not be able to see that immediately. I mean, we like to see immediate cause and effect, action and reaction. But in life, it often doesn't work that way. An action here may unfold into the reaction over a long span of time. So we're being invited to open up. We're so instant now for now, action, reaction, right? We're being called to kind of see how things unfold, and it is connection. If there are any scientists here in the room, I think you see that science has been moving in that way for a number of years now. We're not looking at systems individually. In order to truly get a sense of reality, we have to look at things in connection to one another, right? Again, the human body. When we look at health, we can't just, if the eye is, if the heart has a problem, we can't just look at the heart. We have to look at all kinds of other things that affect our heart function. So we have to talk about diet. We have to talk about stress. We have to talk about, exercise. So it's all holistic. It's all connected. I see texts coming in. I will get to these in a minute. It's wonderful. Keep them coming. So it's all connected, and and even I had mentioned our gut biome. I'm not sure if I'm using the right word. I hope I am. But even the fact, everything that's happening in us, there's so much happening in us that we are like just clueless about, absolutely clueless. And I know when I was studying biology, I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I can't tell you what all these things are, but I know that there is so much happening inside of me that I have no control over, right? But it all works together to create me, to create a healthy me that can interact with other human beings, to create this global community. Desmond Tutu has a saying, and I'm going to butcher this. I can't quite remember how he said it, but basically, there is something in South Africa, a concept called Ubuntu. I think it's Ubuntu. And the idea is that a person becomes a person through other persons. So the thing that makes us human is that we are surrounded and nurtured and loved by other humans. No human becomes a person in a vacuum. So we are born into a family. All those interactions that we have as babies literally informs the forming of our networks, the networks in our brains. And again, I'm not a scientist. I'm going on a limb here. I'm kind of an armchair scientist. I read a lot. I did love science. I still love science. So if I get anything wrong, tell me. But, all of the interactions that happen outside of us inform, the forming of who we are as persons, as people. So we need other people to be people. We learn from others from how they act. If, our parents teach us how to be kind and loving and considerate of others, they teach us through their words, but they teach us more through their actions, right? So actions speak much louder than words. We pick up on what people do. We copy them, we echo them, people who we admire. And by the way, this happens not just in children, but in adults. So, which, it might be hard to accept because again, we like to think of ourselves as, I don't, copy other people, but we do. We like to hang out with people who we resonate with. And we also sometimes copy their mannerisms because we find resonance with them. So this is something that we do our whole lives. So we are connected in a very deep way. Okay. So maybe I'll just pause here for a minute and I'll see if I can catch up on some of your messages coming in. And please feel free to ask any question related to what I just said. Let's see here. Ministering to the dying. It can't really be explained. Absolutely. I completely agree. It's very hard to explain what it's like. The words are hard to come. When people ask me, I try to explain as best as I can, but it really brings me a deep joy and peace. And when I spend time with the dying, I think people sometimes think, what do you talk about? Do you just talk about dying? No, we talk about living. We talk about life. We talk about what's meaningful. And I never come in with my own agenda. I let them speak. And usually what they speak of is the love for their family, how family is so important to them, how, the things that they enjoy doing in life. That's most people who are near the end of life. And we do talk, sometimes people talk about heaven, their fears of what's on the other side, but mostly people are just concerned for their family. They're concerned that their family will be cared for, that they will be, that they will go on, that they will have the strength to go on, that they'll have everything they need. So again, this speaks to, when you strip everything away, when you strip away money and career and all the things that we have, all these masks that we wear, the professional, the lawyer, the doctor, the engineer, when we strip everything away, what we have are relationships and love. That's it. It's nothing else. And that's what is exposed at the time of death, when people are dying. That's what they're concerned about. Very few people talk to me about anything else. And so they talk about life, about living, about the living going on and continuing to live. And again, it really exposes the deep connections that we have as human beings. All right, let's keep going here. Prayer equals energy. Energy equals force. Love that. Love that. We have the free will to make the right choices. Absolutely. We have the free will to make the right choices. We have the free will to make the wrong choices too, right? So that's the essence of free will. We can choose right, we can choose wrong. But there's a way for me that I've felt, even when I make the wrong choice, that it's all within the context of this grace, of this summons, of this call that never quite goes away. So even when I made the quote unquote wrong choices, grace still caught me. Grace still brought me back. We are all God's children, therefore we should help one another. Absolutely. So the scripture I read from 1 Corinthians, it talked about all the members of the body, right? And we, parts of the body that are visible, the parts that we like, and then the parts that are, looked down upon. The scripture said all the members of the body are needed, all the members. And furthermore, the lower parts are elevated. The parts that are already celebrated don't need to be elevated or celebrated, but the lower parts are celebrated. We, in our day, we are people of the mind. We love the intellect. And so the head gets a lot of attention, right? Because we love being smart. We love knowing things. We love being able to understand how the world works. We love to be able to influence our world, right? We love to be able to do things that influence our world. Welcome, Kathy Jo. Thank you for joining. Right? We love to influence our world. So we love the mind, right? We go to university and when we graduate, we put this beautiful thing on our head. Yes, that's okay. She's not late. It's okay. And it will all be here for us. Kathy Jo's mom, by the way. Welcome, Mom. Where was I? Yeah, so we love the mind, right? The feet, the feet are just, what do we use the feet for? Just to get around, right? I mean, the feet don't think. Maybe if you're a soccer player, then the feet are very important. If you play any kind of sports, right? Then, but it's mostly for physical activity, right? The feet don't think. At least we think. And then I think about, I think like acupuncture and somehow that all the organs of the body are connected to the soles of the feet in some way. Anyways, I'm drifting out of my comfort zone in terms of knowledge. But the feet we don't really see as important. I mean, even in the times in the time of Jesus in scripture, in the times of scripture, the feet were, people wore sandals, so the feet got dusty all the time. And, washing of the feet was something, that was kind of a lowly function, something that slaves did. And again, I think I'm right on this. If I'm wrong, please correct me, anyone. But so dirty feet. That's what feet are, dirty. But look at what Jesus did just before he died. He washed the feet of his disciples, and he said, "You also must do." So in that action, he was elevating the feet, elevating something that was looked down upon, literally looked down upon. He was elevating. And believe me, if you sprain an ankle, if you bust a toe, you quickly realize how important feet are, right? Feet, are very, very important. So all the parts of the body are important. So what does that mean for us in our world? It means that people who are poor are important. People who are not as well educated are important. People who are of different races are important. People who talk differently, who have an accent, are important. People from different socioeconomic backgrounds, I'm kind of saying the same thing, are important, right? People from different countries are important, right? Each person, regardless of how you look, how you sound, the color of your skin, the tenor of your voice, the sound of your accent, whether you're educated, not educated, whether you have 2 degrees, a PhD, no degrees, each person is important. And it's interesting because with this coronavirus, I've heard some commentary about the poor and how it feels like, and again, I'm not going to really get into politics too much here, but in the packages, I think the Senate just passed a bill, but I know there was a lot of rankering over what really is in it. Is it for the big companies, or are there provisions in there to help the most vulnerable? Are we going to get money to the most vulnerable of us, or is the money going to all go to the top, kind of like it did in 2008, right? Where certain organizations that were considered too big to fail got everything, and it didn't quite trickle down. So we saw income inequality rise as a result, and it's only grown bigger and bigger and bigger. And so this crisis is going to really expose that fracture for us too, that we're going to see again how the divisions among rich and poor really affect how people are able to fare in this crisis. The most vulnerable of us may have a more difficult time faring well. But what happens to them is going to affect all of us. If the poor, if they don't have access to hand sanitizer, if they don't have access to places where they can wash their hands and so on, then the virus will continue to spread, and it will continue to put us all at risk. So that's just a real practical demonstration of how when we ignore those considered the lowest among us, that it affects all of us. It affects all of us. Furthermore, I think many of us are facing possibly losing our jobs. So those of us who were considered, middle class and relatively comfortable, over the next weeks can see ourselves being out of a job. And so we may find ourselves in a place that we've never been in before. So who will help us? So are we willing to help those who have less than us? Because anything can happen. We're living in a really kind of topsy-turvy world where rich can become poor in an instant, and where the poor can become rich. It's a very upside down, topsy-turvy kind of world. We're all kind of looking at the stock market, and even before this crisis hit, I don't know about you, but there was a feeling like there's something not quite right. The stock market's going up and up and up and up, and everybody's feeling good. And that's when usually there's kind of something inside like, something's not quite right. And you might hear people say, we're kind of due for a correction because, it's, things don't always go up and up forever like that. There must be a correction somewhere. So even when things were great, right, I think we could feel it. We could feel it, right? And all of a sudden, it's being wiped out. I think the markets today was way up again. But again, in normal times, the markets don't behave like that. It doesn't go up, 800 points one day and then go down 800 points the next day and then go up 800, So all of this, it's very unsettling, where one day we feel like, okay, things are back to normal. Everything's back. And then the next day it goes down again. And we don't know what tomorrow will bring. Will tomorrow be another down day? We don't know. It depends on what's happening in the world. It depends on what certain people are saying, right? Then the markets move. So being poor, what does that mean? Regardless of where we are on that spectrum, we are being summoned, we are being called to care for each other, regardless of where we are on that spectrum. Let's see. Sometimes it takes, this is Eva. Sometimes it takes the pain of trial and error to find out what we are being summoned toward. Yes, absolutely. The pain of trial and error. And I think sometimes we look at trial and error as kind of, here's the path, and then I have a trial and an error, right? And those are kind of like going off the path that I'm supposed to be on. And maybe part of what we're being challenged to recognize is that all those trials and errors are actually part of the path. These aren't detours from the path that I'm supposed to be on. This is the path. All of those trials and errors, all of those trials and tribulations that we've gone through to get to where we are, is the way, is the path, is the journey. So again, I shared a little bit about my story, my fits and starts into where I am now, into this ministry that I love so much. All the things that happened weren't detours. I mean, even going into this business, going into business consulting, is not a detour, but it was a part of the journey. It was how I learned really who I am, who I am. I don't think I know all of who I am. I wouldn't be so presumptuous to say that, but I think I really discovered really a big part of who I am, and I realized that I was not called to business, and I got a sense of what my real gifts were. And so that without that, I really wouldn't be where I am right now. So that was a critical and crucial time in my life, and I needed that. As painful as it was, I really needed that. So I think the trials and tribulations that we're going through right now, it's always hard to see it that way in the moment. I certainly didn't. And we may be undergoing more trials and tribulations in the near future before it gets better. And it's going to feel really painful. It's not going to feel like a blessing. It's going to feel like a detour. And I think, I don't know about you, but I think for me, going through this second full week of this, things are starting to sink in, maybe the first week, the first couple days, I get a couple days off work, that's exciting. I get to take a little break. As things unfold and the numbers of confirmed cases go up, and as more people deaths go up, and as more businesses file bankruptcy, as more people get laid off, it's starting to sink in. It's getting more real. And, there's like a first wave of anxiety, and then kind of the second wave that sneaks up on us as things sink in. Like, okay, this isn't so exciting anymore. Like, I wish this could just all go away. But again, we kind of have to go through this. However long it takes, we don't really have too much control. So yes, Eva, I agree that trial, error, tribulation, it's all part of the journey. But we are going to walk this journey together as a community. Let's see. So please, so it's like 56 minutes. It's amazing how I never thought I could speak for an hour without stopping, but here we are. So please, if you have any questions or comments, please ask or keep them coming. So what questions do you have? What concerns do you have as I talk and share about oneness? So just to kind of wrap up here, right? We're being summoned, right? We may have a choice in terms of how we respond, but we don't have a choice in that we have to respond, right? We have to respond in some way. This crisis is forcing us to respond. We are being summoned. Life is summoning us. We may not quite fully understand what that means, but again, as I said, things unfold over time. The action, the reaction, it's gonna take time to unfold on a global level, but also on a personal level. And for you, I think the work for each one of us is to be present to that unfolding as we try to figure out what exactly is it that we're being called to. Again, I'm going to argue here on this call that we are being summoned to recognize our interconnectedness, our oneness, that we are moving from a paradigm of me to a paradigm of we, where we're no longer me, individuals trying to get my piece right in the world, because there is only connection. What I do affects you, what you do affects me, and that we are called to participate in this journey together. So we're being called to move from me and my to we and our. And again, you may have sensed this. This has been something that's been happening for decades now. I think we've been slowly moving in that way, recognizing that we're no longer just individuals. We are social beings. We are made for one another. And even our sciences are catching up. Things that philosophers and theologians have been saying for centuries, scientists are now saying. You hear more language being used that once upon a time used to be relegated to people who were kind of on the fringes, right? New agey, fringe thinking. But we are beginning to see it more and more. Mary says there are too many people who don't accept that, who don't, and I'm assuming you're saying who don't accept the oneness of our reality. I think that's true. I think there are many of us who still who we have a hard time grappling with that. But I think what this crisis is doing, I think where we've been moving as a society as a whole, is the recognition of the oneness. Now, that recognition might unfold. I think it takes sadly, it takes a crisis to really show how much that matters. That when a virus that started halfway around the world can infect the whole world in weeks, I mean, that there it is. You know, we are one. And I think for those, I mean, so again, I'm going to say this again. These things take time to unfold. So I think for those of us who are still operating under the old paradigm, I think life, at some point, we're going to be called to account. We're going to be called, that theory is going to be put to the test. So as long as we're healthy, as long as we have good jobs, as long as we have a roof, then we can go about reasonably living and pretending that it's me, I'm a self-made man, I'm a self-made woman, I'm responsible for all my success. What does the poor have to do with me? As long as I have my peace, I'm good, right? We can go along with that for a while, but in my experience of working with people who have been in crisis or people who are at the end of their lives, at some point, that way of thinking is going to hit up against reality, the reality that we have to depend on each other. We have to depend on each other. And whether it takes an illness, an accident, a virus, something happens that causes us to look up and to realize that I can't do this alone. I can't recover alone. I need other people to help me. So I think this is something that is unfolding, and I think I think this is the opportunity where we can spread this message. And I think that's a big part of why I'm here. So I feel like I'm being summoned to come here, to show up here. I shared before that I'd never done a live stream. I've always wanted to do it, but I was just scared out of my mind, like you wouldn't believe. I've been wanting to do this for years, and I would find an excuse. I was so busy, right? I could use that excuse all day long to not show up here. And look at what this crisis did. It opened up a little space in my life so that I could show up here. So I could show up here and try to be a part of the solution, a part of helping us through it. And it's certainly helping me. But I really hope that it's helping you as well. And I'd like to keep doing this, to keep showing up. So if you, we can do this, through this crisis. So I'd love to do it again. If you'd like to see it again, let me know. Maybe we are the virus. Yeah. Yep. I have certainly thought of that. Actually, that comment made me think of the Matrix movie. I don't know how many of you have watched the Matrix, but my wife and I watched it a couple months ago. We just, I don't know why, we just decided to watch the Matrix movies. And I think the first Matrix, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sorry, you can Google it. But basically the Matrix, I forget the actor's name, Keanu Reeves, something like that. I can't. Anyways, the idea that computers have taken over the world and they have infected our minds. We're living in this post-apocalyptic world, and computers are using us as a power source, right? And have created this alternate reality for us so that we can continue to pretend as if we're living in the world that we knew before the computers had taken over. But there is a scene in the movie, yes, Keanu Reeves, yes. So there's a scene in the movie where the computer is talking to the main character about, yes, Lawrence Fishburne, a wonderful guy. I don't know him personally. There was a scene in the movie where Keanu Reeves is being, where the computer is telling him, basically, you humans, as he has him trapped, or it may have been, no, I think he was talking to Lawrence Fishburne's character. You humans, you humans, I know what you humans are. You are a virus. That's what you have been to this earth. And he goes on to explain why we are viruses, the way that we act, the way that we, just destroy things. So anyways, it made me think of the movie. But there are many things that the ways that we've harmed each other, the ways that we have harmed this earth, that we really have caused a lot of harm. And I think we're being called to face some of that actually in this time as well, and to reconsider how we interact with the world. Are we just takers? Are we just taking? Because that's all viruses do: infect and take, right? Are we going to be takers? What are our companies? Are we going to be, as individuals, as companies, organizations? Are we just in it for ourselves? We make billions of dollars, but we poison the water. But it doesn't matter because we made billions of dollars. Who cares about clean water and clean air and forests, right? The Amazon is burning. People have described the Amazon as the lungs of the earth. Oh, who cares? We get to make billions of dollars a year, so all of these things, I think, over time, they're gonna be called into question, and there'll be a time of truth, of reckoning, where we will have to confront and face the actions that we have been taking up until this time. We have an opportunity now to be able to reconsider how we interact, not just with each other, but with our earth, with our beautiful earth that supports us. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there, unless someone has a burning question based on anything I've said. I thank you so much for your attention and just, being here with me, being a part of this. So you can always email me and ask questions there. If you go on my website, the email address is ceylon@spirituallivingforbusypeople.org. So you can ask me questions there. If you want a topic that you want me to cover on another video, you can certainly let me know. And if not, I will certainly come up with something to share. So I will look to do another one of these. And thank you so much for your positive feedback, everyone. Elizabeth, Mary, thank you. And I've gotten some emails as well. Thank you for your encouragement. It really means a lot. So with that, I thank you. And again, I pray for peace, safety, love, blessings for you, your family. And come what may, we will get through this. See, I'm leaving this with two questions. What is the pandemic calling me to as an individual? Wonderful. Yes, wonderful. And how about freedom? Freedom as a topic, I'm assuming. Yeah, that's something I can cover in more detail, in talking about freedom and what that means. Another question: what is the pandemic calling me to as a part of the whole? Yes. Yes. You are a whole and you're also part of a whole. Both and. So again, thank you. Peace and blessings to you. And we will see you again soon. Thank you.